My name is Benedict. I am 83 years old. Last Saturday, my wife Edith and I were together in the way that matters. And when I say together, I mean together. The kind of together that makes a man feel like he still has a reason to wake up the next morning. She fell asleep with her head on my chest, and I lay there, looking at the ceiling, listening to the river outside, thinking about the fact that 7 years ago, I could not have done that, could not have come close. I live in a small town along the Connecticut River in Vermont. I worked 31 years at the paper mill before they shut it down. I've shoveled snow in January at 4 in the morning. I've carried engine blocks. I've done things with my hands that most men half my age would not try. But the hardest thing I ever had to do was admit at 76 that my body had stopped being a man's body in the one way that mattered most to me. Nobody tells you how to say that out loud, so most of us don't. My doctor, the new one, the one who finally got it right, told me last year that my blood work looked better than most men in their 60s. I told him that's because most men in their 60s are still doing the things that got me into trouble in the first place. He laughed, but I wasn't joking. At 83, I have more energy before noon than I had at 76 all day. I sleep deep, I wake up clear, and I'm present in my marriage in a way I thought was permanently gone. I'm telling you this because I need you to believe what comes next. Not because I need your faith, because you need your own. If you're watching this right now, I think you already know what I'm talking about. Maybe it's been happening slowly. Maybe you've been making excuses. Maybe you've already been to the doctor and he handed you a prescription and you took it and it either didn't work or it worked in a way that felt wrong, like forcing a lock with the wrong key. I know that feeling. I lived inside that feeling for almost 3 years, and I want you to stay until the end of this, because what I'm about to tell you is the thing I wish someone had told me when I was standing in that doctor's office with a little blue pill in my hand and a knot in my stomach. What comes later in this conversation changed everything for me. Not the pill, not the doctor, something else entirely. The first time I noticed something was wrong, it was a Tuesday night in November. I remember because Edith had made pot roast, which she only makes on special occasions, and it was our anniversary, 49 years. We went to bed, and I wanted to be there for her. I wanted it in a way that had nothing to do with performance and everything to do with love. And my body said no. Not partially, not slowly, just no, like a switch someone had turned off without asking me. I didn't say anything. I turned over and pretended to fall asleep. Edith didn't say anything either. And that silence, that specific silence between two people who have been together for half a century and suddenly have nothing to say, that silence was worse than anything a doctor could tell me. It happened again and again. And each time I got a little quieter. Not just in the bedroom, everywhere. I stopped reaching for her hand when we walked to the mailbox. I stopped sitting next to her on the couch. I started going to bed earlier, or later, whichever meant I wouldn't have to face the moment when the lights went off and the question hung in the air. I went to Dr. Kimball, my doctor for 20 years. He ran blood work, he checked my prostate. He told me my numbers were within range for a man your age, which is doctor language for what did you expect. He wrote me a prescription for one of those pills, the ones they advertise on television with the bathtubs and the sunsets. I filled it, I took it. And what happened was this. My blood pressure dropped so low, I had to sit on the bathroom floor for 20 minutes. My face flushed, my head pounded, and nothing else changed. Nothing below the waist moved an inch. I went back. He adjusted the dose. Same thing. Different pill. Same thing. A third option. Headache, nausea, and a feeling like my heart was trying to leave my chest. I told Dr. Kimball it wasn't working. He looked at me the way you look at a machine that's past its warranty and said, "Well, Benedict, at your age, sometimes the body just slows down." I sat in my truck in that parking lot for a long time. I didn't start the engine. I just sat there and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Rage. Not the hot kind, the cold kind. The kind that sits in your gut like a stone and doesn't go anywhere because you don't know who to throw it at. The doctor wasn't wrong. He just didn't know what he didn't know, and neither did I. For the next year or so, I went numb. That's the honest word for it. I stopped being angry and started being nothing. I did my chores, I fixed things around the house, I ate meals across the table from a woman I love more than any other human being on this earth. And I could not bring myself to touch her shoulder when I walked past, because touching her shoulder meant remembering what used to come after, and I couldn't bear the distance between what I was and what I used to be. Then Dr. Kimball retired, and the practice brought in a younger doctor named Nguyen. Dr. Nguyen was maybe 40, small, quiet, the kind of man who listens more than he talks. I went in for a routine physical. He looked at my file, he looked at the prescriptions, and he said something no doctor had ever said to me. He said, "Mr. Benedict, can I ask you something? Are you under a lot of stress?" I almost laughed. I told him I was 80 years old, retired, no debt, no boss. What stress could I possibly have? He leaned forward and said, "That's the problem. Everyone thinks stress is about deadlines and traffic and money. But the kind of stress I'm talking about is the kind your body makes when it feels threatened. And your body can feel threatened by shame, by frustration, by 3 years of feeling like you've lost something important and not knowing why." He explained it to me without any big medical words. He said the body has a system, like a thermostat, that controls how it responds to danger. When that system stays on too long, it floods the body with a specific chemical. That chemical is supposed to help you run from a bear, but when it stays elevated for months, for years, it does something else. It shuts down the systems the body considers non-essential. And the first system it shuts down is the one responsible for desire, for arousal, for everything that makes a man feel like a man in the dark. He said, "The pills your previous doctor gave you were trying to force open a door that your own body was holding shut from the inside. That's why they didn't work. They were fighting your own chemistry." That sentence changed the direction of my life. He didn't give me a solution that day. He gave me a question. He said, "What if the problem isn't plumbing? What if the problem is the signal your brain is sending to the plumbing?" I drove home thinking about that. I didn't sleep well that night. But for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't numb. I was curious. Now I'm going to tell you what I found. 4 things. None of them cost money, none of them require a prescription, and none of them were things my first doctor ever mentioned. The first one is the 3-minute trick I mentioned. I almost didn't tell anyone about this because it sounds too simple. But simple is not the same as easy, and simple is not the same as fake. Here's what I do. Every single day, twice a day, once in the morning before I get out of bed, and once at night before I fall asleep. I lie flat, I close my eyes, I breathe in through my nose for 4 seconds, hold it for 7, and breathe out through my mouth for 8. That's it. 4, 7, 8. 3 minutes, 6 or 7 rounds. Now, why does this work? Remember the thermostat Dr. Nguyen told me about? The one that floods your body with that stress chemical? This breathing pattern is the only thing I've found that talks directly to that thermostat. A study out of Harvard, and I'm not a man who reads studies, but I read this one, showed that this specific pattern of extended exhale activates the part of the nervous system that tells your body the danger is over. It's like flipping the thermostat from emergency to normal. When that happens, the stress chemical drops. And when the stress chemical drops, the body stops shutting down the systems it turned off. The mistake most men make is they try it once and give up because they don't feel anything. That's like planting a seed and digging it up the next day to check if it's growing. The thermostat didn't get stuck overnight. It's been stuck for years. It takes consistency. Every day, twice a day, The shift is gradual, and then one morning you notice something is different and you can't even say exactly when it started. If you got this far and any of this sounds familiar, the silence, the distance, the pills that didn't work, then I want you to know I'm not reading from a script someone wrote for me. This is my life, every word of it. And if you hit that subscribe button and the thumbs up, what you're doing is helping this reach another man sitting in his truck in a parking lot, feeling like the world just told him his time is over. That's all I'm asking. Not for me, for him. Now, I want to be honest about something. For most of my life, I did not believe in supplements. I'm not that kind of man. I'm the kind of man who believes in work, in food, in sleep, and in not putting things in my body that I don't understand. When my nephew mentioned something he'd been reading about, a combination of natural ingredients, a capsule, I told him to save his breath. I said if 3 different prescriptions from a licensed physician couldn't fix what was broken in me, some capsule from the internet wasn't going to do it either. But then I kept doing the breathing, and I started noticing small changes. And I started wondering if maybe Dr. Wynn was right about more than just the stress. If the problem was really about signals, about what the body needs to send and receive in order to function, then maybe there were things that could support those signals, not force them, support them. So I looked at what my nephew had sent me, and I read about 2 things in particular. One was maca, a Peruvian root. What caught my attention was that it doesn't do what the pills tried to do. It doesn't force anything. It works on the brain, on the signaling that tells the body what to want and when to want it. That was exactly what Dr. Nguyen had described. The signal, not the pipe. The other was forskolin, from a plant called coleus. What it does, from what I understand, is it helps the body make its own testosterone. Not from the outside, from the inside. The body's own machinery, doing what it was built to do, just given a nudge. I want to tell you what I noticed. I'm not going to exaggerate. Around the 5th week, I woke up one morning and I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not arousal, something before arousal. A kind of aliveness, a warmth in my chest. I was standing at the kitchen counter making coffee, and I realized I was looking forward to the day. Not because anything special was happening, just because I felt present. Like I'd come back into my own body after being gone for a long time. That's the only way I can describe it. It was like someone turned the lights back on in a house I thought had been permanently dark. The link is in the description if you're curious. No pressure from me. I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm here because I'm 83, and I almost let them convince me I was done. The second thing I found is about what you eat in the last 3 hours before bed. This one made me angry when I learned it, because it's so obvious and no doctor ever mentioned it. When you eat heavy food late at night, especially sugar, bread, pasta, anything that spikes your blood sugar, your body spends the entire night managing that spike instead of doing what it's supposed to do while you sleep. And what the body is supposed to do while you sleep, especially in the first 90 minutes of deep sleep, is produce the hormone that keeps you functioning as a man. A study from the University of Chicago showed that men who consistently slept poorly or ate late had levels of that hormone equivalent to men 15 years older. Think of it like this. Your body has a night shift crew. Every night, they show up to do maintenance, rebuild tissue, clean out waste, produce hormones. But if you dump a truckload of sugar at the front door right before they start, they spend the whole shift dealing with the mess and never get to the real work. That's what late eating does. It hijacks the night shift. What I do is simple. Nothing but water after 7 in the evening. If I'm genuinely hungry, a handful of walnuts or a small piece of cheese. That's it. I was skeptical at first. Then I started waking up feeling different, more rested, clearer, and yes, more alive in the way that matters. The third thing is cold water. Not a cold shower. I'm 83, not a monk. But at the end of my regular shower, I turn the handle to cold for about 30 seconds. The first few times, I cursed loudly enough that Edith came to check on me. But here's what happens. When cold water hits your skin, your blood vessels constrict. When you step out and warm up, they open wide. That's cycling. Tight, then open, is exercise for your blood vessels. And the blood vessels that matter for this conversation are the smallest, most delicate ones in the body. They're the first to get stiff and sluggish when you stop using them. A study from the Netherlands found that people who ended their showers with cold water had measurably better circulation after just 30 days. The common mistake is going too cold or too long. 30 seconds. That's all. You're training the vessels, not punishing yourself. The fourth thing is something most men have never considered, and it connects to everything I've said so far. Walking. Not exercise walking, not fast walking. Slow, easy walking. 20 to 30 minutes, preferably in the morning, preferably outside. What this does is three things at once. It lowers the stress chemical I talked about earlier, the one the breathing targets. It moves blood through the pelvic area, which is the region most men never think about until something stops working. And it exposes you to morning light, which resets the internal clock that governs when the body produces its hormones. I walk every morning along the river road. I've been doing it for 2.5 years now. Some mornings it's 12 degrees and I wear 3 layers. I still go, because I notice that the mornings I skip, I'm not the same man by the evening. Now I'm going to tell you the part that most of these conversations leave out. Everything I just described, the breathing, the food, the cold water, the walking, that's maybe 30% of why I'm standing here today as the man I am. 30%, maybe less. The other 70% is something no capsule and no doctor and no study can give you. It's internal. And if you skip this part, the rest of it works half as well. When Dr. Nguyen told me that stress keeps the body in emergency mode, I understood the concept, but I didn't understand that I was the one keeping the switch flipped. Not my job, I was retired. Not my finances, they were fine. It was something deeper. It was the feeling of uselessness. The feeling that the world had moved on and left me sitting on a porch with nothing important left to do. I didn't realize it, but for years I had been marinating in a quiet, low-grade despair. Not depression exactly, not sadness, just the slow drip of feeling unnecessary. And that feeling is not just psychological, it is biological. When the body decides it is no longer needed, when there is no purpose pulling it forward, it reduces production of everything: energy, desire, strength. It starts shutting down the way an abandoned factory shuts down, one system at a time. The thing that changed for me, and I'm not proud of how long it took, was a conversation with Edith. She didn't say anything dramatic. She said, "Benedict, I don't need you to be who you were. I need you to be here." That sentence landed in a place no pill had ever reached. I started doing things differently. I volunteered at the Veterans Center 3 mornings a week. I started teaching a young man in town how to repair small engines. I wrote a letter to my brother I hadn't spoken to in 9 years. And each time I did something that made me feel like I mattered, I could feel it in my body. Not metaphorically, literally. The tightness in my chest loosened. My sleep got deeper. My appetite came back. And yes, the other appetite came back too. The connection between purpose and the body's chemistry is not poetic. It's mechanical. When you feel needed, the body responds by lowering the stress chemical. When the stress chemical drops, the hormone that makes you vital rises. When that hormone rises, the blood flows where it's supposed to flow, and the signals reach where they're supposed to reach. It's all one system. You can't fix the pipes if the thermostat is still telling the body to stay in emergency mode. So here's what I'd ask you to do today, before you try anything else. Ask yourself one question. What would make me feel needed tomorrow? Not useful, not busy, needed. There's a difference. And when you find the answer, do it. Do it like it matters, because it does. The body is listening to what you decide. My name is Benedict. I'm 83 years old. I live in a small town in Vermont along a river that freezes in January and thaws in March. I spent 3 years as a ghost in my own house. Pills didn't bring me back. Doctors didn't bring me back. What brought me back was understanding that my body wasn't broken. It was waiting for a reason to come alive again. I gave it the reason. And then I gave it the tools. Leave in the comments your age and one thing you still do that people don't believe is possible. I'll read every one of them. I mentioned the breathing, the food, the water, the walking. Those are real, and I do every one of them. And I mentioned what I found, the combination, in the description, that supports the same signals from the inside. They work together. The habits and the supplement are two halves of the same thing. Neither one replaces the other. The body still responds at 83. I know, because mine does. But it responds differently depending on when you start. The systems I'm talking about, the ones that regulate desire and blood flow and the signals between your brain and your body, they get quieter the longer you leave them unattended. Not dead, quiet. And quiet systems are easier to wake up than dead ones. But every year you wait, the wake-up takes longer. More mornings of making coffee alone in a kitchen that used to have laughter in it. More nights of turning over and staring at the wall. More years of being the man who used to be something and now just sits. That's the cost. Not money. Time. And time is the one thing neither of us can get back. The link is in the description and in the pinned comment. Go there. Read everything. Decide for yourself. Nobody should rush you into anything, least of all me. The difference between the men who come back and the men who don't isn't luck. It isn't genetics. It's the moment they decided that waiting to feel ready was just another way of saying no.